All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Minnie Howard Sign Dedication event and happy International Women's Day. It's been an exciting morning, and I am so impressed with our turnout today. This is amazing. What a great day we are going to share together. I'd like to begin by acknowledging some of our city leaders joining us this morning. Mayor Aaliyah Gaskins, Councilman Kanika Aguirre, Councilman John Chapman, Councilman Kirk McPike, School Board Chair Michelle Reed, School Board members Abdallah, Tim Beatty, Christopher Harris, Alexandria Shosaw, and Ashley Simpson-Bear. We're also joined by our city manager, Jim Parajan. Thank you. I'd also like to welcome our former mayor, Bill Ewell. And special today, I'd like to acknowledge the members of the Belk and Bradley family. If you can wave your hands, everybody. So wonderful. Many have traveled quite a distance to join us today, and we are so thankful. And I'd also like to thank Judy, Marie, and Deborah, family members who have been an integral part of the sign writing and the planning for today's event. Thank you, Judy, Marie, and Deborah. In historic Alexandria, we understand the importance of telling all the stories of history. And this is what we do every day in our department and throughout the community. We are here to make sure that current and future generations know their local history. So I would like to launch, thank you. I'd like to formally launch today's program. I am excited to welcome the Alexandria City High School Titan Choir joining us, who will sing Soon I Will Be Done under the direction of Theodore Thorpe III.
Pretty cool, so we're going to be in and Soon I Will Be Done, arranged by a good friend of mine, Mr. Marcus Ware.
Soon I will be done, 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 troubles of the world, troubles of the world, oh soon I will be done, troubles of the world, going home to live with will be done, will be done, soon I will be done, troubles of the world, will be done, troubles of the world, oh soon I will be done, troubles of the world, going home to live with will be done, will be done, no more weeping and a wailing, no more weeping and a wailing, no more weeping and a wailing, I'm going to live with will be done, will be done, will be done, troubles of the world, the world, oh soon I will be done, troubles of the world, going home to live with will be done, I want, yes I want to meet my mother, I want to meet my father, yes I want to meet my Jesus, I'm going to live with will be done, soon I will be troubles of the world, with the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world. The world will soon will be done, oh yes, done with the troubles. Home to live with God will be done soon. Will be done soon. Will be done. Troubles of the world, with the troubles of the world, the troubles of the world. The world will soon will be done, oh yes, done with the troubles. Going home to live with God. We'll be living soon. We'll go live with God.
That was fantastic. Let's thank them again. It is my pleasure to welcome Bishop Paul Taylor, nephew to Marie and Deborah Bradley, to share a blessing.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give a few words of blessings, but we're going to ask Lamont Belk, Caitlin Little, Ryan Peace, and Dennis Winstead to come forth at this moment to share a few words, and then we will give the blessing.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Bishop, and to our distinguished guests, Mayor, our Board of Education Chair, and all the elected leaders, family, and friends. I stand here honored to state that as I'm the son of one of the student plaintiffs, Vicki Lynn Belk, sister of Judy Belk, and this is quite an honor. I'm also a beneficiary of the sacrifice of Judy and Vicki and Bradley children, and all the other plaintiffs. I'm a native of Alexandria. I attended Douglas MacArthur School, ultimately graduated from Bishop Ireton. I navigated public and private education in this city without the scourge of racism and segregation that they experienced. And I will say, as I thought about this moment, the biggest issue that I faced going through school was not racism, but who was a Cowboys fan and was arrested. That's the true story. So it shows the progress that has been made and shows that the sacrifice, although I didn't deserve it, I certainly benefited from it and so many others. Thank you.
I'm grateful for the cohesive actions taken by our parents and grandparents, Julia and Stanley Bradley, and their legal team. Today, we honor the relentless bravery of my mom, Marie, my uncle James, Aunt Deborah, and all the children who integrated the schools. This is how we, one day, climb to the mountaintop by standing on the shoulders of giants. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Caitlin Lytell. My mother is Deborah Bradley Lytell. Aunt Marie here. Uncle was James. And today, I have the privilege of honoring and remembering my wonderful grandparents, Julia and Stanley Bradley, for courageously challenging Alexandria City Public Schools to secure the best possible education for all of their children. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Brian Peaks. I'm the son of Judy Belk, one of the student plaintiffs. I was asked to honor a family member. We have a very large family that's been in Alexandria for a very long time. I couldn't think of one person to honor, but I wanted to make sure that we think about the sacrifices of people who didn't live to see school integration, who had to go to schools that were blighted by neglect and racism. Keep them in mind as we celebrate the integration of schools. Thank you.
And as we ask these blessings over this tremendous grand occasion, what's taking place here historically, a few verses out of the Bible, out of Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not into thine own understanding, but in all thy ways he shall direct thy paths." And truly we've seen how God has directed the paths of these two families, these constituents, which has drawn us together in unity. And so as we come today, we ask the blessings of the Lord to continuously rest upon this work, this accomplishment, this establishment. There will always be a symbol of unity and coming together and showing how we can do more and make a greater impact as we come together and work together than we are separated. And so we ask the blessings to continuously rest upon this, that every generation that comes after us, it'll be a symbol of how we can be effective and make a change for generations to come. I pray that God will continuously bless this work, this assignment, these families, and our descendants that will come after us. God bless you.
Now it is my distinct pleasure to welcome our mayor, Aaliyah Gaskins.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's so good to be with you. On behalf of the Alexandria City Council, it is my honor to stand with you for this historic sign unveiling and also a recognition of the power, the strength, and the resilience it took to integrate our schools. We all know that in 1954, the Supreme Court case Brown versus Board of Education ruled against segregation in our public schools. We also know that despite that ruling, many jurisdictions, including Alexandria, dragged their feet in making that possible. We know that our long-term superintendent, T.C. Williams, did everything in his power and his influence to try and stop that from happening. But we also know that when there are a determined few who recognize that their rights matter, their voices matter, their stories matter, they will not be stopped. And so today, we are not just here to unveil a sign, we are here to celebrate and acknowledge the power of the families in the Belk family and the Bradley family and all that they did to make sure that their children, and so many of our children in our city, could have the quality education that they deserved. You're going to read on the sign about their stories, their struggles, and their strength. I hope today, though, you're going to get to know and understand the individual people behind every piece of this movement and every battle that they had to overcome in order to make today possible. On this International Women's Day, I hope that you'll take special time to read about the women who were the power behind this movement as well. I think you've heard some of their names in Judy and Vicky and Deborah and Marie, and how they fought as moms and aunts and sisters and cousins to make sure that their children had the education they deserve. Not only do we come together to celebrate this historic moment, we are also here to issue an apology. As the families worked with our Office of Historic Alexandria, they raised the fact that an apology is not only necessary, but it is long overdue. And I can tell you, at first, when I was asked to read that apology, of course, in my mind, I was like, well, it's about time. But then I also thought, as a Black woman standing here apologizing on behalf of people who did not look like me, would probably not have wanted me to be standing here, and would have never apologized to me or my family for the things that they have done, that in many ways, this was a little awkward and uncomfortable. But then I also thought that as the leader of this city, it is my responsibility to represent her with all her flaws, but also with all of her potential. And I think the best apology is one that not only recognizes the wrongs, but commits to making sure that we don't do those things in the future, and that we make sure that we are the equitable and the accountable city that our residents deserve. And so I'm going to read this apology. Every single word was written in partnership with the members of the families and their descendants, and is a recognition for the hate, for the racism, and for the issues that these families have endured in our community. But it is also a call to action for every one of us for the future that we have to protect, the stories we have to tell, and the battles we still have to fight in a country that refuses to recognize all of our brilliance, all of our stories, and all of our history. So today, the City of Alexandria offers a sincere, heartfelt, and unreserved apology for our failure to deny equity in education for generations of students. We acknowledge the discrimination and the hardships inflicted on your family and hundreds of other families, as you all fought for equal education for your children. We especially recognize the profound bravery of Judy and Vicki Belk and Deborah, Marie and James Bradley, the mini Howard Five who integrated the school, each of them carrying the weight of a community's hopes and the pain of an entire people's struggle. We acknowledge the trauma faced by the families and the many Black children who had to sit in classrooms with teachers dismissing their abilities and walking school hallways with students who told them that they were meant to be feared. And even as obstacles were placed in their path by city officials and others in the community, you, our youngest civil rights activists, excelled and became leaders. While we cannot erase past racism and the trauma that we have caused, we ask for forgiveness from all those who were hurt by our actions. The work to rebuild trust, to restore hope, and to ensure that history does not repeat itself is ongoing. And the City of Alexandria vows that every student will be valued and every student will be supported with the promise of inclusion and equity that are at the core of all our decisions. As a city, we hope that this apology will mark the turning point as we all work together for a brighter and a more just future here in our community. I would not be standing here without the actions of the Belk and Bradley families. I would not be standing here without their fight and without their recognition that our children deserve better. So I thank you for being here today. I hope that you will continue to lift up their stories and make sure that everyone who walks past this school recognizes that we are standing here on the shoulders of giants, on the shoulders of brave men and women and their children who endured so many things that they should never have had to endure to make sure that we could be a better life and create a better future for all in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you for your inspiring remarks. And I am so proud of our city, and I'm proud to support the great work that we do to have just this amazing, equitable, caring community. So thank you all for being a part of this moment as well. To share her firsthand experiences, I would like to welcome Marie Bradley to the stage.
I think it's still morning. Good morning, everyone. You know why I'm standing here? Because I'm the oldest one who survived. And the other two were 6, and they don't remember as much as somebody as old as me did. Exactly. So hold on to your seats. This is a hard story to hear. You're not judged by the height you have risen, but from the depth you have climbed. Frederick Douglass. The 1960 event we are commemorating today is the result of a long, hard road that Black people in Alexandria have traveled in order to get an education. The Belks and Bradleys share the same great-great-grandfather, George Wesley Adams, who was born in 1825, a free man. His mother was freed, and his grandmother, born in 1766, was freed when she was 30 years old in 1797. In the 1860s, George Wesley Adams lived in the predominantly Black Fort Ward community, just 1 block from here, with his wife, Anna Maria Val Adams, and their 8 children. Free and enslaved people had taken refuge at this Union fort. They built the earthen fortress, and some men served in the Army, the Union Army. The Fort Ward neighborhood, where he and his descendants, the Caseys, Belks, Adamses, once lived, was raised by the city in the 1960s to make way for Fort Ward Park. His Adams Bradley descendants lived for generations nearby on Quaker Lane in the Black Seminary neighborhood, right there. It was raised to make way for what is now Alexandria City High School. George was a farmhand who was illiterate because of anti-literacy laws in Virginia, which forbid Black people from learning to read or write or to even own a book. Also, there were no schools for Black children. George Wesley Adams made sure that all of his children were educated as indicated in the U.S. Census records. His children, his grandchildren, and his eldest great-grandchildren likely attended the Kemper School. It was constructed in 1875 for Black children in the Black neighborhood of Green Valley in Arlington. It was a 2-mile walk. My uncle James Adams Jr. said he and his older siblings walked down Quaker Lane to Green Valley to go to school in another county. In 1898, George's son, Robert Adams, who was a mail carrier, the first of 3 generations of mail carriers in the Adams family, and his wife, Clara Shorts, gave a 1/4 acre of land to build a 1-room school for the Fort Ward community. The school was closed in 1925, leaving the 2 communities again without a school. There wouldn't be a public school for Black children in the Fort Ward and Seminary neighborhoods until 1927. The seminary community, meanwhile, raised $1,000 to build the seminary school for colored children, and also received a $900 grant from the Rosenwald Foundation. There's an exhibit in Richmond on the Rosenwald schools, and $4,000 in public funds. The school system never provided running water or a furnace. There was a privy and a well. My mother, Julia Adams Bradley, and her younger cousin, Maydell Casey Belk, both graduated from that elementary school. With no middle or high school for area Black students in the 30s, my mother traveled to Washington, D.C. every day, to Francis Junior High School in Georgetown, and later to Armstrong High School near Howard University to get her high school degree. Here was her journey. She walked first from seminary down Braddock Road to Russell, where the cannon is. She caught the public bus to 12th and Pennsylvania Avenue. She took the trolley up Georgia Avenue, and she walked the rest of the way every day. She had near perfect attendance. Her other siblings did the same. there wouldn't be a high school in Alexandria for Black students until 1934, when Parker Gray, also an elementary school, was accredited. Maydell, Casey Belk, and others from the neighborhood are proud graduates of Parker Gray High School. Raise your hand, Parker Gray graduates. Parker Gray, built in 1920 as an elementary school, was outfitted by the residents, who raised $4,000 for the furnishings and all of the teaching materials, all of the books. Its capacity was 450, but was so overcrowded with 950 students that classes were held in nearby homes and in the basement. To alleviate crowding, the original Lyles Crouch was set up in 1934 in an old fabric factory at the corner of Pitt and Wilkes Streets. But it too became overcrowded. In 1950, the seminary school was closed, and area Black students from Fort Ward, Seminary, and Lincolnia were bused to Lyles Crouch past white school after white school after white school. I remember that old factory building as a first grader. It was dark in the halls because the lighting was dim. For second grade, my class was held in an office building 2 blocks away. We walked to the building unescorted. I was 8 years old. The city continued to build schools for white students. In 1954, the school system built Minnie Howard Elementary within 3 blocks of our homes, but the Bradley and Belk children couldn't enroll. We instead went to school in a factory. In 1958, all schools in Virginia were still segregated, despite the 1954 Supreme Court ruling in Brown versus Board of Education decision mandating integration. Instead, the Virginia legislators created a massive resistance and passed laws defying the ruling. They ordered counties that wanted to integrate to be closed. Some schools closed for years. That year, Blois Huntley, a cafeteria worker at Lyles Crouch, joined a lawsuit demanding entry into the all-white George Washington High School for 2 of her children. Thomas C. Williams, then superintendent of schools, found out and fired her. Leora Jones filed a lawsuit in 1958 on behalf of her 2 infant children, Otis E. Jones and Betty Jo Jones. 7 families later joined the lawsuit, including Julia Adams Bradby and her husband Stanley, my parents, and Maydell Casey Belk. It was argued by 2 NAACP lawyers, Frank D. Reeves of Washington, D.C., and Otto L. Tucker of Alexandria, under the guidance of Thurgood Marshall. The suit became Jones versus Alexandria City Public Schools, Vicki Belk and others. I remember going to long meetings with the lawyers and taking a battery of tests because Superintendent T.C. Williams declared that Black people were mentally inferior and morally lower. The school board set up academic and other admission criteria. My younger sister was 5 years old, Deborah, when they gave her a test, asking her what a silo was. She was upset that she didn't know. What child in the city would? Mrs. Jones's children were considered too young for admission. Obviously, they were infants. So she moved to Washington, D.C. Mrs. Blois Huntley dropped out, and she moved to Washington, D.C. But our parents and others persevered and prevailed. We were the second group of Black children to integrate a white school in Alexandria. I remember that first day, walking up to Minnie Howard with my lunch and my book bag. Our minister, Arthur Preston, insisted on accompanying us. He was very worried. Reporters and photographers waited in front of the school. One newsman asked Deborah, "How do you like your new school?" And she said, "I don't want to go to school." She and Judy were 6 years old. There were no protests. We were taken to our individual classrooms, each of us the only Black child in our class. Judy and Deborah's 6-year-old peers were fairly accepting. Our older peers were not. While we participated in Girl Scouts, Glee Club, softball, the band, and on, there was no camaraderie. I was 10. I remember sitting every day at lunch and recess by myself. No one spoke to me. One day the school nurse asked me why I was weeping, and I couldn't put my feelings into words. On that day, February 1st, 1960, everything was still segregated. I had to sit in the back of a bus by law. I couldn't use the public library. It was 3 years before Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King gave his "I Have a Dream" speech. Slowly, other families in the neighborhood applied for admission to Minnie Howard. Several of them are here today. Raise your hand. Our parents' courage and the personal hardships that we endured fostered equal rights. It was hard, and community solidarity. The fight for fairness for all people continues. And now I'm going to read a list. We'd like to thank the Department of Historic Alexandria, Eleanor Bree, Liz Williams, archaeologist Garrett Fessler, Audrey Davis and Arturo Jackson of the Black History Museum. These people conceived of and researched this project, as well as MacArthur Myers. Thanks to the students from the Virginia Theological Seminary who in 1960 came to our homes in the evening to tutor us. Thanks to Ebony Davis, VTS Office of Multicultural Ministries, and researchers Maddie McCoy, Char McCargo-Baugh, and Georgia Brown, Fairfax County Historic Records Manager. Thanks to Kristen R. Moon, Professor, Department of History and American Studies, University of Mary Washington, for her stunning, award-winning scholarly work, Finding the Fort. Thanks to everyone who came here today in solidarity to honor our parents and to celebrate this amazing turning point.
Thank you for your perseverance, sharing your personal story with us, and your personal successes as your family. To offer closing remarks, I'd like to welcome to the podium representatives from Alexandria City Public Schools, Dr. Michelle Reif, Chair of the School Board, and then Dr. Clinton Page, the Chief Accountability and Research Officer.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Clinton Page. I am a native Alexandrian and could not be prouder to be here today to honor this historic event. I am here today on behalf of Alexandria City Public Schools and Dr. Kay Wyatt. I had the distinct privilege before the event this morning to meet members of the families, and I was speaking with Ms. Bradley, and she told me to hold on to my hat as she would be telling the full story, the full history. And I told her that the full history is the only history
Yes, sir.
that we
Yes,
deserve
sir.
to hear. So let's hear it again for Ms. Bradley. I would also like to thank the organizers of this event, in particular those from the Office of Historic Alexandria. Give them a round of applause. As well as Mayor Gaskins, both of whom have played a major role in sponsoring the Minnie Howard Historic School Integration Sign, ensuring that the courage of the Belk and Bradley families is never forgotten. This marker is an important commemoration of the historic event depicting the strength and resilience of two families at a historic time within our nation during the height of segregation that led to the brave fight in court to have the original Minnie Howard School standing at the same site 70 years ago integrate the Belk and Bradley children into this school, which would ultimately have an immeasurable impact, as we have heard here this morning, on future Alexandrians, and is truly a historic event. As a leader in ACPS, I could not be prouder to stand here today and tell you that we serve 18 schools with over 16,300 students, and most importantly, the diversity within our schools. We feature 118 countries, students from 118 countries who speak 127 languages. We serve a Black African American student population of over 25%, a Hispanic population of over 35%, a white population of over 25%. We are truly a diverse and equitable school system. It was the families like the Belks and Bradleys who we've heard today who courageously faced the challenges of desegregation, ensuring that all children had access to an equal and high quality education. Their perseverance not only changed the school system, but also shaped a more expansive environment for all. With this marker, as we have heard today, we honor the Belk and Bradley families for their role in breaking barriers and standing up for what is right and what is just. Thank you. While honoring the past, this marker also serves as a beacon for a brighter future, a beacon that can spark curiosity into our full history, to allow for illumination point into our history, not just within the nation, but specifically as a native Alexandrian of Alexandria. I was drawn to, in thinking about and preparing remarks for this morning, a quote by James Baldwin, an American writer and civil rights activist, and I think it's especially poignant for the context in which we find ourselves today. The paradox of education is precisely this, that as one begins to become conscious, one begins to examine the society in which he is educated. We encourage today's students, families, and staff to honor this legacy by embracing diversity, advocating for justice, and always sparking curiosity, illuminating our full history, and moving forward in our values of justice and equity for each student. Thank you again for everyone who made this event possible, and most importantly, to the families who sacrificed. Thank you.
I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Reed,
our school board chair.
One more speaker, just one more speaker. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this important occasion. I want to thank the City of Alexandria and the Office of Historic Alexandria for coordinating this event and for being a city that seeks to preserve and promote our history. I've been thinking a lot these days about the important work of our history and our civic teachers. We talk a lot about literacy and reading and math and STEM, and I'm not sure we're talking enough these days about the importance of our history and our civic teachers. I want to thank everyone really for being here today to remember and to reflect on our history as a city, and to the Belk and Bradley families. I want to say thank you for your courage, for your resilience, and thank you for holding the City of Alexandria and the Alexandria School Board accountable for the unfair treatment of your children and other children. That was wrong, and your family's courage helped to bring about change. And I also want to acknowledge the NAACP, which is a longstanding organization in this country that led this fight, both here in Alexandria, across the Commonwealth, and throughout the United States, for putting their organizational weight behind the families, and for the attorneys Frank Reeves and Otto Tucker for representing the families in the case. You know, there's a certain way we like to remember the story of how public schools were integrated. We talk about the brave civil rights activists and the resistance to the powers that came from the powers that be, and then the resolution, the schools being integrated, and sometimes it's told like this Hollywood happy ending, like the Remember the Titans, the movie Remember the Titans. But if we're being honest, the story that we don't often tell is what happened next in Alexandria. And here, what we saw happen was a lot of white flight out of the city of Alexandria. White flight out of Alexandria City Public Schools. Enrollment in our school system declined, and our public schools experienced several decades of disinvestment. And even today, we're still trying to play catch up. And this was something we talked about at our recent joint budget work session between the school board and the city council, that there's a gap in our history. Between 1966 and the year 2000, we didn't build any new schools in Alexandria. And today, 11 of our 18 schools were built before 1966. And I share this story because I believe that there is an important lesson in this history. And this was brought home for me in a book that some of you may be familiar with called The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee, which came out in 2021. And what Heather McGhee says is that racism has a cost for everyone. When we adopt a zero-sum paradigm, what she calls a zero-sum paradigm, which is the idea that progress for some must come at the expense of others, then we all lose. But she says there is another way. When we pursue racial equity, it benefits all of us because it pays what she calls a solidarity dividend. Solidarity dividends are the benefits that we gain when we come together across race and other differences to accomplish together what we can't do on our own. I mean, if you just think about what would have happened if there wasn't that white flight and if there was continued investment in our schools, where we really could be today. And I believe that that's what we as a city and a school division are trying to do. When we invest in our public schools and our city services, and we include everyone in our community, that promotes the economic health and growth of our entire city, and we all do better. When we look at what's happening at the federal level today, in this moment, it's leadership with a zero-sum paradigm. And I know that many of us are feeling discouraged right now. We're wondering, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I believe that this moment calls upon us to do exactly what the Belk and the Bradley families did 65 years ago. We need to show up. We need to be courageous. We need to be resilient. And we need to proclaim what we know to be true, that the zero-sum paradigm is a dead end for all of us, that solidarity pays a dividend for everyone, and that we choose solidarity. Are you with me? Are you with me? Thank you, everyone, and thank you again to the Belk and Bradley families for being our inspiration and for showing us the way. Thank you. All right, so the magical part of our program, the ribbon cutting, is our next step, and the marker is located in this direction. So we're going to slowly pivot and face the marker.
Okay. You're right there.
I'm not missing that.
Count down.
Michelle, you got it really tight.
You got it tight.
And then definitely go right deep into the alligator's mouth.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. DEI.
What message or significance do you hope others will take away from this sign?
Well, I think that it's a symbol of the importance of the bravery that the families that took on the unjust discrimination of segregation, how that bravery impacted the lives of countless people for generations to come, and how a small group of people standing up, demanding their rights, demanding to do the right thing, really can change the world for in a better way.
Is the history and how things have changed and for the better, and hopefully they'll keep it going in this right direction.
What did the process of putting this event together involve?
My understanding is that it involved a really deep partnership between the Office of Historic Alexandria as well as each of the members of the Bradley and Belk family, making sure that we were not doing something that wasn't driven by their stories, their history, but also the real trauma that their families have faced. And so together we worked on the language for the sign, we worked on the program, and also the city's apology.
How does your family, or what influence does your family story have today?
Well, you and I would not be standing here today if we hadn't made that sacrifice, because everything was segregated then. I couldn't go in a shop.